We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kendra Hensler. I am the current admission and enrollment coordinator at the Minnesota Waldorf School. I am filling some very big shoes of our wonderful Lacey Griffin, who is our full-time admissions coordinator and director. She's out on parental leave with a beautiful baby boy right now, and we all miss her very much, but we're excited to have you here. Hello, for those of you coming in. We're going to go over a little bit of how the morning is going to work together. So welcome, welcome. We're so glad you're here. I have a wonderful, wonderful group of teachers and parents and alumni here today to join us. And we have a really exciting morning planned for you. I think we can all collectively agree that we wish it was in person. It's part of the experience of feeling the school and being in these lessons is being in person. So we're going to do our best to bring it to you at home today. And we know that technology can sometimes be glitchy, so please feel free to reach out to us. If you can reach out to me, you can PM me, chat me if you need support with anything technical as we start getting into the morning. I'm here to help that. We will be recording the session this morning for families who aren't able to join us live. So I wanted to make everyone aware of that. And just wanted to kind of get started. We have some faculty that are going to go around and share a little bit about themselves, about their role here at the school. Before we do that, I wanted to give you a quick overview of what we're going to be covering this morning. So between now and about 10 o'clock, we're going to do kind of some introductions and a little bit of overview of Waldorf education and what it looks like here at the Minnesota Waldorf School. And then at 10 o'clock, you're going to have the opportunity to choose a class as though you were a student. And the teachers are going to give you a little bit of insight on what that looks like if you're on the fence of which one you would like to join. It's up to you. They're both wonderful. We have had families in the past that when attending live, they bring, two grown-ups and one person goes to one classroom and the other goes to the other, and then they compare notes at the end of the day. If you would like to do that with your own devices at home, you're welcome to. If you have someone that is on a tablet and someone on a laptop, someone on a phone, someone on a desktop computer, that's welcome and fine. You could also get the recording from me later. So really kind of your choice. Just go with your gut with which class sounds interesting. You may need a few supplies from home for these classes, and the teachers are going to tell you what you might need. Really simple stuff, but as you're thinking about which class you'd like to do, they're going to let you know what you're going to need. So I'm going to hand it over to our wonderful faculty to introduce themselves and share a little bit more about what our lessons are going to look like this morning. Harper and Elizabeth, will you get us started?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Harper Moore. I am an alum of the Minnesota Waldorf School. I graduated in 2004. I went to high school, then college, and then I was lucky enough to be able to come back and teach at my alma mater. Right now I am teaching the 5th graders at the Minnesota Waldorf School, but I began as a kindergarten assistant. So I've been able to be with a lot of my children because in the Waldorf schools, you move with your teacher for 7 years. So we have a really deep connection and I love this class very much. In our class, we will be talking about the form drawing curriculum at Waldorf schools, how it's a uniquely Waldorf curriculum, how it leads to letters, to numbers, and then later into geometry. So we are aiming to do a little bit of talking and a whole lot of drawing. Anything to add, Elizabeth?
No, thank you, Harper. You set our class up so nicely. I'm Elizabeth Lenars, the teacher of the class of 2026. We are currently in 4th grade together, and it's really been a joy. Harper and I will be teaching the form drawing class, like she said. If you are interested in taking that class, it would be great to have some colored pencils, paper, and a good eraser.
Wonderful. So Amy and Caitlin, will you take it away now and introduce your class?
Sure. I am Caitlin Riley. I am the first grade teacher at MWS. I have a fifth grader in Ms. Moore's class, and I began also as a kindergarten assistant. So my class, we will graduate together in 2029, but I have been with them already for a couple of years. So it's really wonderful. Our class is literacy in the lower grades, and we will be examining how we begin to learn how to read. So if you are going to be in our class, you will need paper. If you happen to have block crayons at home, you will need those. If you don't, that's okay. Just whatever crayons you have will work just fine. Ms. Rodriguez, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Ms. Riley. You did a lovely job as well. I am Ms. Rodriguez, Amy Rodriguez, and I am the teacher of the class of 2027, and we are currently in the third grade. And you're seeing all of our math behind us. So you'll get a glimmer of math if you join our language arts session today. As Caitlin alluded to, if you're going to join, you will need some crayons and paper and also a pencil for as we enter the second, third, and fourth grade curriculum. So I hope you will enjoy whichever session you go to and maybe ask others how theirs was afterwards. Thanks all for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And I would love to kind of open the floor for a few minutes to our lovely faculty and just give us a little bit of a picture of the history of our school and how it got started, and a little bit about Rudolf Steiner and what he was all about, and why he created this method of education and what kind of makes it different from other education forms that are out there.
I'll start us off. So Waldorf schools were founded, the first Waldorf school was founded in 1919 as a school for the children of factory workers. And the Waldorf schools were based on the philosophy of human and specifically child development of Rudolf Steiner, who was an Austrian philosopher, and he had a lot of interest in education, human development, world development, universal evolution, farming, music, art. He kind of had his hand in many pies. Waldorf schools currently and always have kind of focused on the quality of education over the quantity of education. So a lot of us have come here from public education, seeking something with more holistic and human-rooted educational philosophy, instead of saying, how do we get these children to get higher scores on their math test? A lot of us are here because we feel that this focus on the child as a whole, including head learning, heart learning, and hands learning, to be the ideal way to teach. MWS was founded 35 years ago in order to bring these teaching philosophies to the children of Minnesota. And I'm wondering if any of my colleagues would like to add anything to this.
I'm also hoping that I could hear from one of you a little bit like more tangibly of what the head, heart, and hands means. So like when you're teaching a class, you know, especially thinking about kind of the trajectory of, let's say, the 8 years that students might spend in the grades program here, you know, how does that change over time? And what are you introducing in the early grades through, let's say, the heart, through story, that later comes through the hands and their movement experiences, and later to the head? What does that look like as you are planning out your curriculum and your classes?
I am happy to speak to that, Kendra. In the lower grades, before we get into first grade, it is all about the physical learning. So in our preschools and kindergartens, the children are digging, they are playing, they are working, they chop vegetables, they make bread. So their hands are really working. When we move up into first grade, they're all on the cusp of, they're turning 7, all of them. And so they're all getting ready for all those forces that were helping them grow are now ready to start letting them learn. And so they're very energetic and ready. So we go that way through their imagination so that I tell so many stories. Everything is done through imagery in first grade. We tell stories, we play games. The games always support the imagery. So for example, in math right now, when we just finished math, and we're moving back into language arts. So in the math, what we would do is we learned number sense by exploring what happens when you break a stick. You have 1 stick, you break it, now you have 2 sticks. And then we would play games with jumping and clapping and all kinds of things so that in their bodies, that becomes really seated. They have a really good understanding of number. They are developing a really good sense of language that is not intellectual. It is all through their feeling. And it's living in their body. So that is how we're doing it in the younger grades. I'm actually going to let someone else speak to as we go up. I'll pass the baton to maybe Ms. Moore or Ms. Rodriguez.
I'd be happy to do a bridge maybe in between, because I have a perfect picture behind me actually of what comes next. I'm hoping many of you can see these images above the columns here. And in 3rd grade, we are working on doing long division and long multiplication. But in 1st and 2nd grade, we established the strong imagery for them. And each place value has an image that goes with it. So the 1s is a hand. And when the hand gets full, and that's 9 pieces, if they find a 10th piece, they get very worried and it has to go somewhere else. And so we have a pouch that Grandpa wears and all the gems go into Grandpa's pouch so he can hold 10. And when Grandpa gets 9 pouches around his neck, they all have to go into Mama's basket because there's too many around his neck. But even in the 3rd grade, we're hearkening back to this. You probably can't see the words underneath, but I am now listing the words for the columns. So 1s, 10s, 100s, 1000s, and the image so that they can remember easily for those children who still need some of that imagery. But for those who are ready, we're starting to touch on those head pieces and the memorizing. And even with multiplication and division, I subtly show the rows by using a farm. So we're still using those images and starting to transfer that to this head place. And I think Harper can maybe even take it from there.
Sure. So now that they have such a firm foundation for numbers, for letters, for sounds, and that has moved from the body into the head, they can start using that information, transforming it, and producing things of their own. So it's sort of like the Bloom's taxonomy concept. They're analyzing and they're producing now because they have such a strong foundation in all the things that they need academically, but they also have such a vivid and well-developed imagination that's been nurtured through these younger years that they don't just need to attach to facts. They can take those facts and produce something of their own. So the drawings and the things that perhaps you saw on Ms. Rodriguez's board, in the lower grades, the students would likely be copying those from the teacher and putting them in their morning lesson books. And morning lesson books or main lesson books, we use both terms, are the Waldorf version of a textbook. So the students produce their own textbooks. But in the lower grades, often this work is done with the teacher, copying, or the teacher leads them through a drawing. As they get older, the students start to produce their own work. So the teacher helps them and guides them through a lesson, and then the students produce their own morning lesson book pages or some sort of product to show what they learned and to really take it a step further.
I'm going to jump in 1 second. Harper or any of the teachers, Miss Moore, can you go through the tools that evolve over the 8 years to create your main lesson books, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the beginning, perhaps Caitlin or Miss Riley, would you like to start with what tools they use in first grade?
Sure. So in first grade, we use block crayons, which are big. I'm actually going to show you one. Ouch. This is a block crayon. And we start with these, and we use these for drawing mainly in my class. So they have lots of different edges. And so the children, when they're drawing, and you'll see this later, they can make big, beautiful sweeps of color. And this really helps them start to use their imaginations, and it helps develop their fine motor. Then we also use stick crayons. We also use beeswax, which is really warming, and it helps strengthen their hands, and it also works with their fine motor, and it helps them develop the capacity for work so that they can really be able to stick with something that's difficult. But then they get a beautiful little beaver or a bear or something. So that's what we start with in the first grade.
I'll jump in with third. We still are using block and stick crayons in third grade, but we are transitioning now to also using colored pencils with drawing. Usually in second grade, children start to get pencils, especially for writing, because as you probably can imagine, writing with a crayon is not terribly satisfying at some point, because you can't quite get that fine writing. And so in second grade, usually we start writing with pencils. And then in third grade, pencils become an art piece as well. So we're learning how to shade with colored pencils. And it's always quite fun because some children really have an affinity to moving towards the colored pencil, and some children really do not. They would prefer to stay with crayons. And so that's always a fun place to be. And then we use plasticine. So it is a clay that also has beeswax in it, so that it doesn't dry. So it's sort of the step up from beeswax, where they have to work even harder because there is clay in there and they have to really get it warm, but it's reusable. And so there's this feeling that after they've created something, we look at it for a bit and then we bring it back down to a sphere and start again. And so just even that process alone is good for them to experience that things are not permanent and things are not perfect. The other thing in third grade often is introduced is an eraser. Often in first and second grade, we teach more how to fix a mistake the way that it is. And then in third grade, we start to introduce erasing because they're ready to have their work be a little more contained, and they're ready to see how to make that work. Other than that, there aren't too much change there, but maybe Elizabeth and Harper can speak to the next stage.
I can say that in fourth grade, we are drawing mostly with colored pencils. Crayons still come out from time to time, but there's more artistic freedom and choice for the children as they go through the grades. So sometimes children will go back. We have a communal box or basket of crayons now. They'll go back and they'll say, I need a crayon for my drawing. And that's great. We also in fourth grade have started writing with a fountain pen. And I feel like the fountain pen for me right now is the ultimate why tool, because we've given them this fountain pen and we haven't just said, oh, it's fourth grade, you write with a fountain pen now. before working with the fountain pen, the children had to find a stick and dip the stick into ink and write with the stick. And then they had to find something else to write with. So they moved from a stick to a feather, and they could feel the difference there, but it was still frustrating because they would have to dip and re-dip all the time, and they'd sometimes get big splotches of ink on their paper. And so then finally we made our way to the fountain pen, and wow, how easy is it to write with the fountain pen? It's a joy, and it feels like it's been earned to go through the frustration of writing with everything else, and to be in this place where you can create beautiful handwritten book pages without having to keep dipping and dipping. So that's where we're at in 4th grade. Harper, are there any new tools in 5th grade?
So traditionally in 5th grade, the students get these bigger, more choice of, these larger selection of colored pencils. So we get the Kardash, these really nice colored pencils that they can use, and lots of different colors, and lots of responsibility with the colors, because as I said before, I'm not necessarily telling them exactly which pencil to use and how to use it. I will introduce them, but then they get to produce what feels good and what feels right to them. So the colored pencils are a big shift because they have so many more options. They also have their fountain pen, their ink pen, which again is a big shift too. And it's so lovely to write with, but it also is a big responsibility because unlike a pencil, the ink pen cannot just be erased. You know, so they really have to think about what they're writing and be very intentional with their work to be able to produce something that is beautiful and true with their ink pen. From beeswax to plasticine, now the 5th graders are using clay, and they can get a lot more detailed, and they can make something that can be dried, or hopefully someday we can have something that can be fired, and then something that is permanent, that they can keep, some work that they can just hold on to. So really the materials in Waldorf schools are very intentional and very connected to the child's development as they go through the years, and meets a certain point where they are in that grade. And it's one of the things I think that draws a lot of people to Waldorf. The materials are so beautiful. And I think it's also important to know why we introduce them at each stage. So I'm very grateful for that question.
I'm just going to add that it ends in 8th grade with a computer. So you basically get like a little graphic design education built in over the 8 years.
So Satchel is going to be speaking on our panel later as an alumni. So he was the one that asked a question before, and also just chimed in. Those of you who are joining just now, welcome. There's some that are just coming in. I did want to ask before we go into our breakout rooms, one question that I feel like sometimes gets overlooked in tours, and also is something that I think is a really central heartbeat to this school, which is that there is a real appreciation and intentionality around a reverence in Waldorf education, and sort of a dichotomy of open free play in nature. So we have 8 beautiful acres that students get to play in for hours every day, which not all schools have the opportunity to have, and that's something we really value. But also this dichotomy of being wild and crazy and playing outside, and then learning how to self-regulate. And that's something that's taught way, way early in our early education program, and then grows. So I'm hoping that maybe you as faculty can speak to that a little bit, and why reverence is important, and how it's teaching self-regulation in a time that is very chaotic. And we're living in, you know, lots of technology available and lots of opportunities that almost feel like an attention grab everywhere. And how does Waldorf allow students and teach students to sort of find a self-reliance and self-regulation?
I'm happy to start that. It is something that, particularly with my class, I have to really work hard at. And so it is something I think about a lot. So I would say that for me, if I could wrap it into one picture, it would be when the children come in the morning. There's a little time. We don't start right at 8:30, especially in the younger grades. In the upper grades, there's a little closer to time starting. But when you're coming in the younger grades, there's so much busyness and the children are wanting to say hello and good morning. And there's a lot of activity and energy, and it's not bad. It's just children being children. But I have a very special bell that I ring, and it is a Tibetan chime. And if those of you who are familiar, when it rings, it's meant to clear. And so as soon as that bell rings, I ring it 3 times. And by the end of those 3 rings, everyone must be silent at their desks with their arms folded, ready for verse. And this is how I can probably speak for most teachers. There's some chime or song or sound that brings the children together, and they hear it, as Kendra aptly said, from kindergarten on, and they know what that sound means. It's time to bring myself together. I don't have to say that to them, and that's the beauty of most of Waldorf, is we can incorporate these sounds and reminders and images. Instead of saying, would you please all be at your desk now, please, everyone at your desk, would you come to your desk? And you, that causes more anxiety and commotion, and there isn't that stillness and reverence. But when we come together in that moment with those sounds and we light the candle, there's this peacefulness. And as the children get older, they can start to recognize it for themselves. And you can say, in 8th grade, it's time for stillness. And they know what that means because they've experienced it, and they've experienced what the whole classroom feels like in stillness. They know what their teacher feels like in stillness, meeting them. So I hope that answers your question, Kendra. It is one of the most beautiful things for me in Waldorf.
That is wonderful. And I think that all of you would probably have a lot to say on that topic. So we can come back to that later if people who are here would like to hear more about it. Right now, we're going to split into our classes. So just to review, we have a form drawing through freehand geometry class, kind of aimed at the upper grade children that Elizabeth and Harper are going to be teaching. And then we have an introduction to literacy in the early grades class that Caitlin and Amy will be teaching. So I'm going to just open up the breakout rooms, and you will have the choice of which one you would like to join. If you're having trouble doing that, you can also type in the chat which one you'd like to go to, and I can manually assign you there. So we're going to open that up now, and you can hit your little breakout room button and see the option of which one you'd like to go to. And you can go ahead and move yourselves into the breakout rooms.
Now would be a great time to go ahead and get supplies. You will need paper. I would get several sheets. You will need crayons. If you happen to have block crayons at home, please get them. Please make sure you have a brown, a purple, a gray, and a golden yellow. Those are some important colors for our drawing. Make sure you have a pencil. And Ms. Rodriguez, did you need them to have an eraser?
No, I'm going to show them how we fix things without an eraser.
Thank you, Rodriguez. So yeah, now is a great time to just hop off and grab that, and we will wait just a teeny weeny bit longer, I'd say.
Caitlin, I just wanted to add so that everybody knows the expectation. We hope that you will shout out like 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders. However, we would like you to all stay muted. And that way, with our limited time, you can have the experience that they have, but we will be going through things, just so you know, a little faster than we would with the children, as we expect you as adults to be able to grasp things a little quickly, so we can show you a little bit more. But please feel free to be exuberant as the children are.
Yes, just muted. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez, for that reminder. And I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to treat you like first graders for a little bit. All right. Standing tall, like a beautiful tree. Arms are long, verse ready, please. The sun with loving light makes bright for me each day. The soul with spirit power gives strength unto my limbs. In sunlight shining clear, I revere, O God, the strength of humankind, which thou so graciously hast planted in my limbs, so that I, with all my might, may love to work and learn. From thee stream light and strength, to thee rise love and thanks. Sit down, please. Good morning, first grade. I'm so glad to see you today. Now, once upon a time, in the nation of the Zulu, near the mountains of the dragon, there lived a great chief named Ngazulu. Ngazulu had a beautiful daughter named Kwelanga. She was as beautiful as the sunrise, which is why her name was Kwelanga, because it meant sunrise. Kwelanga was so beautiful that she had many, many suitors, and Ngazulu wanted her to have a suitor who was worthy of her. And so he sent out a great message through the land that should a young man wish to marry his daughter, he should come to the chief and he would be given a task. Now, a great many young men came, but none of them could complete the task. Now, off in a faraway village, there was a young man named Zamo, who was an only child. And he had heard of Kwelanga, and he had heard of the tasks, and he decided that what he needed to do was to go there and try his hand. Now, his mother and father were quite worried about this, and they said, no one has survived this. The young men come, they do the tasks, they cannot do it, they lose their life. And Zamo said, I cannot speak with another man's mouth. I must do it myself. And so off he went. And he went to the great Ngazulu. And he said, he bowed before the chief and he said, greetings, Nkosi. And Ngazulu said, what are you doing here? And Kwelanga said, well, not Kwelanga, I apologize. I made a mistake. Zamo said, I have come here to this kraal because I wish to marry your daughter. And Ngazulu said, where are all your people? Zamo said, in my country, we travel alone. And I come to this kraal to ask for your daughter's hand. Now, as this was happening, Kwailanga walked along, and she looked like a beautiful sunbird, and Zamo knew he was in the right place. And Kwailanga caught a view of Zamo, and she was very intrigued. So Ngazulu said, fine, and here is your task. See those fields out there? There's all this corn in the field. What you must do is you must gather each piece of corn by hand and put it in this basket. It must be done by sunset. So off Zamo went, and he worked all day without resting, picking up piece after piece of corn, but the sunset was getting closer and closer, and the field was not even half cleared. Zamo began to despair because he knew he wouldn't get it done in time, but suddenly a voice came over the hills. Red grains of mealy corn scattered by our mothers, fly back from whence you came, gather with the others. And sure enough, the corn seeds flew up and gathered themselves into the basket, and the field was scraped clean. So Zamo took the basket to Ngazulu and said, I have completed your task and I am ready to marry your daughter. Ngazulu, not that easy. So Ngazulu said, you must complete another task. And this task, look out here. Here is the forest. See all the trees in the forest? You must fell them all before sunset, or you will not marry my daughter. And so out Zamo went with an axe. And he began to work heartily without stopping. He felled many, many trees, but it was a large forest. So Zamo began to despair again. And then floating over the forest came the song, trees of the forest in the sun's red glow, fall before Zamo, bow yourselves low. And all the trees in the forest as one were felled. Zamo went back to Ngazulu and he said, I have felled all the trees and I am ready to marry your daughter. Ngazulu did not want Zamo to marry his daughter unless he was worthy, and all these tasks were too easy. So he went to his magicians and he said, we must come up with a task. So they worked all night, and in the morning, they had their task. Zamo went before Ngazulu, and Ngazulu said, look out on the cliffs. On the cliffs, you'll see a thorn tree that grows on the very height of the cliff. On the top of that thorn tree, there is one thorn. You must pluck that thorn and bring it to me. And if you do, you shall have my daughter. So Zamo went, and he looked up at the cliff, and he saw that tree, and he knew that he could not do this task. But he climbed anyway up the cliff, and he went up to the tree, and he could see that if he went out on the very end of the tree, the branch would break, and he would fall and be killed on the rocks below. They were sharp and jagged. And just as he began to despair, out across the plains came the voice. Thorn tree, wind and weather worn tree, your topmost thorn, please, pluck for Zamo and me. And Zamo knew that it had been Kwailanga singing the entire time. And as the song ended, the topmost thorn pulled itself from the tree and spun through the air and landed in Zamo's hand. And hand in hand, Zamo and Kwailanga went to Ngazulu. And they bowed before him and said, here is the thorn. Ngazulu looked at his daughter, And he looked at Zamo, and he looked at his daughter again, and he knew that Zamo was the man for her because Zamo made her happy. And that was the most important thing. First graders, please get out your crayons and your paper. Grown-ups, I am going to stop my camera here and I'm going to go over to a document camera so that you can actually see the drawing. So give me just a moment, if you please. All right. Oh, dear. All right, hold on a second. The document camera was locked. So here are our technical glitches. So, but this gets you some time to get out your crayons, get out your paper, get yourself all set up. In first grade, we have our paper in landscape view, so horizontal. So you can set that up for yourself, that your paper is horizontal. And we're just having some more technical moments. I'll just be over here. So that story is a Zulu fairy tale. And one of the things, just while we're waiting, I'll just give you a little overview. You can see behind me, we do this with basically every letter. It gets a little less detailed as we go on. We're ready? All right. So, but this is basically how they learn their letters. And now you're going to learn the next part. So we're all set up over there. So I am going to turn off my camera over here. All right. And you should be able to see my paper here. So, and I should be pinned for you nicely. All right. So first graders, please get out your ochre block crayon. If you do not have ochre, just a nice yellowy brown will do just fine. First graders, using the lake edge of your block crayon, please take your block crayon and on the stones of your paper, the earth of your paper, going from left to right, we will make the beautiful sand. We're making the ground. And we'll just do a few sweeps with our crayon. Now, please take your gray block crayon, And now again, using the lake edge of your block crayon, left to right, stars to stones, drawing the cliffs. Luckily for me, I have tech support. All right, now you can see that now I'm going stars to stones, and you can push kind of hard now. You want these cliffs to be dark. Those cliffs were high and dark. All right, now, please take your purple block crayon. And again, using the lake edge, you will go along just like I'm doing here on the left side of your paper, of your rock. So we can see all those shadows. Dark hair. And now I'm going to just take my crayon lightly and just give a little more shadow. Okay? There we go. Now, bring back your gray block crayon. And now we're going to switch to the river edge. And with the river edge, we're going to make the jagged rocks. Please use the left-hand side of your paper. Let the colors grow. And again, take your purple block crayon and on the side, carefully do your best, most careful work, first graders. All right, now you should have your cliffs, your rocks. Now, please take your umber block crayon, your umber block crayon. You may just use a dark brown. And again, we're now going to use the stream edge and we're going to go so lightly. Okay? And here comes our tree. Now, I'm going to go from the stars to the stones. And I'm going to make sure that my tree has roots that grow right into the cliff. And here comes my topmost branches, right up here, topmost branches. Now, the thorn tree is quite jagged, so you can make your tree branches jagged and crooked. And now I'm going to take the very edge of my block crayon, and I am going to put the thorns that grow on it all over. You can do them wherever you like. But we want to make sure that right up on the top, that the very highest one, right here, there, we can see that one. All right, now, please take your golden block crayon, using the lake edge, going from stars to stones and left to right. Be very careful of the rest of your drawing, and we are going to make our sky. Now, most of our story takes place at sunrise and sunset. So take your vermilion crayon. A red orange will work nicely here, or just an orange. And again, using the lake edge and staying close. Stay close to your rocks. Stay close to the sand. Just coming up so that we can see that the sun is coming up. And where Quelanga and Zamo live, the sun is bright and warm. And then with your marvelous magenta, red violet will work very nicely in this place. And we'll just carefully come up. And just allow that. I pushed a little too hard there, you can see. So we want to be really, really light. There. And you have made a beautiful first grade drawing. All right, I'm going to put my camera back on over here. And Ms. Rodrigue, I'm going to go over to you.
Thank you, Miss Riley. Hello, everyone. Now that you have gotten to go through what it is to be a first grader, very briefly for language arts, I'm going to swiftly take you through second and third and into fourth. I want you to know that I will not be telling another story. I know that we could all sit all day and listen to the beautiful stories that come from Waldorf teachers, but to save some time, I'm not going to tell another story, but you should know that in second grade, our stories come from fables and folk tales from all around the world, and including Aesop's fables, some that you might know, like the fox and the grapes, but also from Eastern Europe and Africa and India and China. There are many, many folk tales and fables that you probably would recognize because, as you might know, many things are similar through the world when we try to teach children lessons. And then in third grade, also in second grade, we talk about heroes and heroines. Now, this has in the past also been called the Saints and Heroes block. Many teachers have moved away from just telling saint stories So we no longer call it the Saints block. We usually use heroes and heroines, or some people call it wonderful people from around the world. There's all different titles, but essentially we pick out upstanding citizens from all over the world who have had to go through a lot of trials and tribulations and worked really hard to get where they are. Last year, I told the story of Frida Kahlo and her life. And I've told the story of Wangari Maathai planting trees all over Africa. And so I think it is important to know that these rich stories are there, even though you won't hear them from me in these few minutes. Then in third grade, we work in the Old Testament stories and also farming in Minnesota. And right now we're telling some stories of early farmers, as well as indigenous farmers and what that looked like in the land. So the stories become a little more historical and a little less nonfiction, or excuse me, a little less fictional and fairy tale, and are starting to move into a more factual historical picture, if you will. The children are ready for it in third grade. So I'm going to turn my computer away from my math drawings to my other board. And I am going to walk you through a second grade language arts lesson and then a third grade language arts lesson pretty quickly. So in second grade, now that we have the basis of all of our letters that we learned so well in first grade, we really work a lot with phonics and phonemes and phonemic awareness. And we do a lot of decoding. I'm going to use a real word, but we often also use a lot of, we call nonsense words, and the children love them because of course they sound so silly, but it often helps children to get out of themselves. As adults, you know what the letters sound like, so I'm just starting with a regular word. Children who don't know how to read love nonsense words because they know there's nothing at stake if they get it wrong. So what we'll do is I'm going to ask you, using your arm on 3 places at the shoulder, the elbow, and the hand, since this word has 3 letters, we're going to use those parts of our body to sound this word out or decode it. So if you'll do it with me, h, a, p. Now we're going to do it faster. H, a, p. H, a, p. Hop. Hop. So we do this with many, many words. Now, dear second graders, I have a surprise for you. I have a friend that you know very well. Pardon my squeaky chalkboard. And this friend loves to wear a superhero cape. And with his superhero cape, he can jump over letters and he can help letters say their own names, because sometimes the letters, especially our friend vowels, like to be soft spoken and they just say ah in hop. But if our friend super E comes along, he can jump right over the P and help friend O say his name. So let's sound out this word, second graders. Now we have 4 spaces, and when we have 4 spaces, we go on each side of the elbow. So, O, O, ho. So super E can come in at any time and help his friend say his name. So we work quite a lot in second grade with things in this way. I'm going to show you something from our first grade lesson. We heard about the thorn. When we see a word that has a sound that comes from 2 letters, we can put those letters together like best friends who walk together with their arms together all the time. They never like to be apart, and they only like to make sounds together. So this word has 4 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4. O, n. O, n. Thorn. Now, for you adults, they would have learned already that the RN signals this to be O as well. So I've skipped ahead just to show you how we do the combination letters. As well as using our arms, we also jump on our desks. I will not make you as adults stand up on your desks right now, but if you could imagine, we practice spelling in 2nd and 3rd grade, still using our bodies. And so in this word, I would have the children, usually we have our consonants on top of the desk and our vowels on the floor. And so we would say, O, And so they're getting this sense of what is a vowel, what is a consonant, but their bodies are moving. And then we would begin to spell it. So THORN. And this, while being fun for them, is also helping them kinesthetically get this into their bodies and have some real muscle memory around spelling. As many of you probably know, English is a very difficult language. And I often tell the students this: oh, you're learning the most difficult language and you're doing so well. The next stage of this, you will now need your paper and pencil. I am going to write a word on the board. I will use a nice, easy one for you. Tap. Please write as many words as you can by exchanging one friend for another. So you could take away friend T and add a new friend. You could take away friend P. You could take away friend A. See how many words you can make, just exchanging one letter at a time. Then I will ask you to add a letter to tap. Add one letter to make a new word. Then I would have the children share these with me. They would be using most of the time a small blackboard or a whiteboard or paper if we don't have those. I like to use the small chalkboards. They're easy to erase between each. And they would hold them up and they would all read me their words. So as you can see, this is bringing this phonemic awareness in a fun way that helps them see that they can read and write. That is often the biggest hold back for children, is they think they can't because they can't just look at a word. And so all of this, every morning we go through words like this. And as we learn new phonemes or new rules of grammar, we add those. And I end up with a stack of cards like this that we use in the mornings to keep going through. Then the next step once we are reading and writing our words, now we need to know what is a doing word and what is a naming word. And often this comes at the very beginning of 3rd grade. In 2nd grade, we talk about what are names of things and what do they do, but in a much broader way. At the beginning of 3rd grade, when in the story of Adam and Eve, they name all of the animals, we talk about naming words. And so I asked the children, what are some of the animals that Adam named? And of course, they will say fish and dogs and cats. And we will make a list of all those names. And then we will work for that a good time on naming words. We talk about some words have a capital letter at the beginning. Then my naming words become blue. So I might have my fish, my dog, maybe a worm that is usually a favorite of third graders. And then I say, what do these animals do? And this usually comes with the story of Noah, because Noah did quite a lot of things, and he built the ark and he gathered animals. So we talk about what do these things do? So as you might imagine, we could say fish swim. And our doing words are always in red. That helps us know that we are doing something. Realizing you probably can't see my red very well. And we could say that dogs bark. And then, of course, worms slither. So now that we are getting nouns and verbs, doing words and naming words, now the children get very excited because of course they can write sentences. And now becomes this wonderful growth time towards the end of third grade, which is what I'm doing right now. And we're talking about how do we make a sentence that's more interesting? How do I get a picture to someone? Fish swim is telling me something. How do I show something? And so we say, what kind of fish? Oh, a red fish. So now we can say that red, pardon me, I have this trouble, I have to admit, when we're writing words in colors and it is a color word, it is very difficult. So red fish swim. And of course, we keep the different forms of writing in different colors, so it's really easy for them to start to see this. So our adjectives are in green. And of course, green is related to blue, so they stay together. And then what kind of dogs bark? And of course, someone inevitably has quite a vocabulary. So we might end up with stinky dogs bark, which is in fact the sentence I got this year. And then worms, what kind of worms? Long worms. Then of course I say, well, that is great, but how do they swim? Oh, they swim fast. Great. So red fish swim fast. Then we have sentences and we begin to talk about what makes a sentence. Why is this a sentence? Well, let's see, it has a capital letter. It has certain kinds of words in it, and it ends in something. And so we talk about punctuation. I won't belabor you with writing more, but we do use what's called kid writing, and I wanted to mention this because it is really important, and then we'll open for questions. Kid writing is when I or any of the teachers will say to them, please write me 1 or 2 or 3 sentences, for example, about Quilanga. And the kid writing means that if they don't know how to spell a word, they draw a line in place of that word, but they try to make as many sounds visible as they can. So if the word is, for example, stinky, if they hear the S, they might write S, T, and then a line. And then they come up to me and they read their sentence to me. So stinky dogs bark loudly. And maybe they have misspelled all of the words. And that is okay. Because the whole idea of the kid writing is to prevent them from being locked up by fear of spelling. And so this way they start to write and realize that writing is enjoyable and the teacher helps. So I come back and say, oh, stinky, let's sound that out together. You have ST, that's correct. What comes next? I. And I go through and help each individual child. So this way they are developing their writing skill while they're learning spelling at the same time. Third grade is also when we bring spelling words in, but they're what I would call more like vocabulary words. So depending on the unit that we're in, for example, right now we're doing measurement and math. So all of our spelling words are measurement words. So it really connects together. I do want to open up, pardon me, I'm going to move myself back over here where I can have a seat. And I think we should have questions for the remainder of our time. Caitlin, are you ready to answer some questions?
I surely am.
Great. Feel free to either raise your hand physically if your video is on, or to use your digital hand to raise, or use the chat if you are more comfortable typing in. And we'd be happy to answer questions. We have just over 8 minutes, so hopefully we can answer as much as we can for you. Nicole.
Y'all. I am dealing with a first grader who thinks that her friends can read and write and do all these things that she can't do. And she wants to work hard and want I don't know how she figured that out, but she wants to learn. What can I do to not screw up what you're doing to allow her to have some confidence around this?
I will go ahead and answer that one. The biggest thing that you can actually do is just sit with her and read. Read out loud to her and let it be fun and enjoyable. She is doing perfect work in first grade. She's just where she needs to be in first grade. And yes, there are children who they already have phonemic awareness. They're already in a pre-reading stage. But we're like any classroom, it's a mixed bag. So I think just knowing where she is enough, and just sitting and reading with her, keeping it fun, keeping the love. One of the reasons that we're telling so many stories is we're also giving them a love of story and a love of language. And so you can keep that alive at home by reading out loud. And one thing that you can also do is if you are reading, I actually happen to have, here, I have Fox and Socks, because we were just talking about X and foxes, and we got really excited about this book. So if you're reading out loud to your child who is a pre-reader, then you can say, stop it, that's enough, sir. I can't say such silly stuff, sir. So you're helping them learn how to track.
So for those of us who have been with Waldorf for a little bit, and my family doesn't harass me as much, but how do we explain to people why the kids learn this way? Like when I'm advertising school to somebody else, why is this? I know what I would say, why it's so beneficial, but how does it work to tell other people about how this learning to read later on works better kind of thing?
I can say something to that. And I would add to Caitlin, when you're doing this is some fun, but also helping to get their brain and body connected. When you are going to read, you could have them point to the words and have them exercise their reading finger first. It can do push-ups on the table, and it can do jumping jacks, and make sure their reading finger is ready to go. And that can help disseminate some of that energy. But as for talking to skeptics about late reading, what I will tell you is actual studies have shown that Waldorf children by the end of third grade are even with their peers in public schools as far as language arts goes. So this is not something that is delayed forever. But by the end of third grade, as in public school, we are starting to read to learn instead of learn to read. So in Waldorf, we just extend the learn to read a little longer because there isn't a real good reason that they have to read to learn before fourth grade. Before that, we want them to hear the stories from us. We want them orally listening to the story and really hearing the language. This strong auditory processing is so important. So many children nowadays have low auditory processing skills, and it is for numerous reasons. But you can tell them confidently that they will be even with their peers by the end of third grade, and that they are learning much stronger auditory processing skills than their counterparts. The other reason is often you'll hear there are studies that show that children actually don't have the brain shift to really know how to decode these letters until they're 7 or 8 years old. I often tell parents, if you think about our history as humanity, we have not always been able to decode and encode letters. For a very long time, we lived as only an auditory species. And so if you can think about it as the journey of humankind and compare a child to that light, you can see that for the first 7 or 8 years, it is sort of analogous to those first several thousand years where we also did not have a written language. Written language is new. And so for them, it's new too. I hope.
We've got a couple of questions in the chat. So I wanted to just, because we don't have a lot of time left, so I just want to go ahead and address these 2 questions. And then what we can do is if you still have remaining questions, you can give them out in the main session. So I will briefly say for the story and how that translates, the next step in that is that you find the letter and we start working with the sound of the letter. So if you look carefully at your drawing, you should actually start to see there's a letter T in that drawing for tree. And I teach upper and lower case together. And if you can look behind me, let's see, those are up. So you can see, we refer to these as anchor pictures. And then we move into memory reading and we practice writing the letters over and over again. So there's a lot, I can't answer all of it right now, but that's how it begins to transition. When you want to decide how your child's ready for first grade, you can work very closely with your kindergarten teacher. Part of it is age, part of it is when their birthday is. We want them to be 6 going on 7. In a Waldorf school. My children are right now in our first grade. We have some 7-year-olds and we have some 6-year-olds, and they're all turning 7. We actually have a couple who are going to turn 8 this year. If your kindergarten teacher says, we don't think they're quite ready, it's okay for your child to spend another year in kindergarten if they're really not ready. Because if they go too early, it's going to affect their learning. They may have social difficulties, they may have academic difficulties. So it's better when they're little to move them slowly because they'll be able to catch up. They'll be fine. So I see you nodding vigorously, Ms. Rodriguez. All right, so guess what, everybody? In 13 seconds, we're going to go back to the main group. I'm really glad you are all here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you.
So as we get settled in, we did have a request that we give you just a little orientation of each of our classrooms, because one of the most aesthetically pleasing things about Waldorf education is the care and intention that the teachers and the students put into making the classrooms look beautiful. And it's something that really grabs visitors when they visit Waldorf schools, is just the beauty of the classrooms. So I wonder, Elizabeth, would you like to just do a quick zoom around your classroom so we can all see it?
Sure. So we are sitting in front of the main chalkboards in the classroom. This is what the students face each day. And I'm just going to take my laptop around. There's my desk. And then this is kind of we have the schedule and then our form drawing of the week. And then there's a chalkboard drawing from a story we've heard recently. And next to that is the homework chalkboard, which is a new 4th grade thing. And then here are all the student desks in the back of the classroom. And I think that's about it. We have in here a fish tank and a lot of plants, which are all taken care of by the students. So for me, that's really nice. And for them too. And that's the tour.
I am muted, sorry. Absolutely, thank you so much, Elizabeth. And the 5th grade classroom is on the other side of the building, so in the upper grades wing. But it has similar features, so I will just show you around. Where we're facing is where the students face when they are learning. We have our schedule, and we always have a festival table or a seasonal table with the candle that we light when we do our verse, sort of going back to that reverence that we try to instill in the students. We have chalkboard drawings. We're learning about ancient Greece. So we have the beginnings of the ancient Greece myths and the gods of ancient Greece. We have a chalkboard drawing representing some of these stories. So you might see Mount Olympus, Hades and Persephone, Perseus down there, some warriors going to Troy. The back of the room with plants that the students take care of every day or every week. And then we have some student work over here. So we just finished up with, ancient Egypt. And we created out of clay the Pharaoh Hatshepsut, who was the 2nd known female pharaoh in ancient Egypt. So we got to mold her out of clay as a sphinx, which is pretty fun. So there's a lot to talk about in the classroom, how we set up our classroom, why we choose the colors we choose for each classroom. So if you have more questions about that, we can talk about that when we come back together for our Q&A. So now to the main event, talking about form drawing and freehand geometry. So form drawing is a uniquely Waldorf curriculum. It's not something you'll find really in other schools. And it is basically just repetitive forms. So drawing repetitive forms, whether they be in a circle or whether they be running forms. So in a line, they can be horizontal, they can be vertical. And they are done from 1st grade through 4th grade, and then it turns into geometry when the students get into 5th grade. So form drawing can be kind of puzzling to people who haven't been introduced to it before, but it is meant to develop a student's spatial awareness, hand-eye coordination, memory retention, neural plasticity, fine motor skills. And it's really the building block of all letters and numbers. And then, like I said, later in geometry, we really use what we've learned in our form drawing as well. So I want to give you a few examples of lower grades form drawings. So the very first day of first grade is actually when the form drawing curriculum begins. And I want to back up just a minute to talk about how that's presented to the students. So one thing I really love about Waldorf Education is the intentionality of everything we do. And it starts at the very beginning, the very first day of first grade. So at the Minnesota Waldorf School, we have something called the Rose Ceremony. And this is a ceremony meant to welcome the first graders to the school, to the grade school. And at the Rose Ceremony, the teachers tell a very special story to their students. So the first grade teacher tells a story to the whole community, but it's really meant for their first grade students. And in that story, and the stories vary, most teachers have different stories. In that story, there will be an element of something that the form is straight and something where the form is curved. So this is integrated into the story. And then the very first form drawing that the students do is a straight line and a curved line. And it's all told through story. And then the children will move a straight and a curved line. So there's lots of steps in between actually putting a crayon to paper. They'll tell the story, the students will move it. So they'll walk a straight line, they'll walk a curved line. They might trace it with their fingers, they might trace it with their nose, they might, follow it with their eyes, all sorts of things to really get straight and curved lines. And this may seem sort of like we're belaboring, this. A lot of people already know what straight and curved lines are. But the reason that we really want to get straight and curved lines into our students is because this is really the foundation for all letters, all numbers, and all geometric shapes. They're all created with straight and curved lines. So if you want to take out your piece of paper and your pencil or pen or crayon, I'll show you just a little bit of this first lesson and what it might look like. So often we'll have two different colors. We'll have blue and red, or traditionally our straight and curved line colors. But after we've told the story, after we've reviewed the story, after we've moved these two shapes, we'll finally sit down and we'll have the students on their piece of paper start from the very top and do as straight of a line down as they can. So starting at the top, and do a very straight line. Then, and there's some debate about this because some people do their curved line facing their straight line so that the curve goes away from the straight line. And some do it the other way. So the curve would be towards the straight line. I chose to do towards the straight line so that the curve was pointing towards the straight line. And the reason that I chose to do this is because the first thing that they then wrote is I can. So the straight line became the letter I, the curve became C, and then they learned A and N. And they wrote I can. And along with this came a verse and a song. And it was really my way of helping helping motivate them, right? They can. This is hard work for a 6 or a 7-year-old to do, but they can do it. They can do it. And I wanted them to get that message right away. So that is the very first lesson of form drawing, the straight and curved line. And often the teacher will then assign them homework, and the students are like, oh, homework, oh my goodness. But the homework really is quite simple. It's just to find things in their life that are straight and things in their life that are curved. So they might find a tree branch that is straight, or they might find some yarn that is curved, or they might find the edge of a book that is straight. And it's to really open their eyes to what's around them and how prevalent, how ubiquitous these forms are in our world. So then after the straight and curved, in second grade and a little bit in first, we start doing more running forms, which are forms that are repetitive either horizontally or vertically. And again, these are all told with story. So for example, and I'm just going to erase my work up here, but if you want to grab that pencil again, or that crayon, I might tell the story of the tortoise and the hare. And I think we all know that fable. The tortoise and the hare have a race, and the hare sprints off and is miles ahead of the tortoise, and the tortoise just keeps plodding along. The hare ends up taking a nap because he is so confident that he has beaten the tortoise, and the tortoise ends up winning the race from his slow and steady progress. So starting left to right, and this is intentional too, because we want the students to start to understand that when we read, we start left to right. So that's the way our eyes track. And when we write left to right. So that's how we should orient ourselves on the page. We might do this sort of running form where we have the bunny hopping, and it hops across the page. And we try to get each hop to be exactly the same height, exactly the same width. So that might represent our bunny. And then we might do the hare, and the hare might take a little longer. So the hare might be more shape. And this can be quite tricky for some students because it involves a lot of hand control. They need to be able to direct their hand where to go. They need to be able to stop and change directions. They need to be concentrated to try to make things the same size. And they need to be persistent so that they can keep going to finish these forms. So this might be something they do in second grade. Looking at the time, Elizabeth, I wondered if you want to go into something that they might do in fourth grade.
Sure, and before I do, I don't know if it's been said, but as we do our running forms in second grade, like Harper was showing us, they start to turn from bumps and squares. They start to go from that to the precursor for cursive writing. And so this is how we teach the children how to write in cursive, through this image of a wave or anything from a story that moves from one end of your paper to another. So cursive is not just a worksheet with a bunch of A's on it. It is a living picture that you hold in your heart and in your body. I am going to, so in fourth grade, we're doing a lot of weaving forms. Like this one and this one and this one are all fourth grade forms that we've done this year. And we're at this point now where our form drawing is not serving our writing. Everyone is writing in cursive. Everyone knows their letters and their numbers. Our form drawing is still a daily practice, but it is a daily moment of beauty. And so we take 5 minutes every day And on Monday, I introduce a form, and the children still use their invisible pencil or the back of their elbow or their nose or their big toe, and they trace it out in the air on the first day. And then on the second day, they put a paintbrush on the bottom of their shoes and they walk the form out on the floor. And so they're getting this beauty and evenness of the form. They're getting it into their body. And we don't put pen to paper, or in fourth grade, we use whiteboards because it's easier to practice and start again. But we don't put anything into permanence until the fourth day of knowing the form and getting it to this inward place. So fourth grade, the forms are serving, they're serving us by giving us something beautiful to strive for. And they're also, of course, helping us with our hand-eye coordination still and having an evenness on the page. Here are a few of our forms. If you would like to get your pencils and paper ready, I would like to do a kind of tricky looking fourth grade form with you. So I'm going to take you over to my other chalkboard. Hopefully you can see. On here I have a lot of helper dots. And the helper dots are going to guide us. I think that I'm going to take my chalk and make them a little bit bigger. Harper, can you see my whole grid?
Could you move it a little more towards you? I feel like we're cutting off maybe a couple of the dots at the end. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I'm going to erase what I have so far. And we're going to start with a row of 3 dots at the top. And I'll try to make them kind of big so you can see them. So we have a row of 3 dots at the top, and they're as evenly spaced as I can get them right now. But it's always okay, especially when you're in 4th grade, to erase a mistake and try again. And then I'm going to come down and make another row of 3 dots. And my goal is to have squares, so equidistance between my horizontal dots and my vertical dots. And then I'm going to make a 3rd row and a 4th row. Oh, good. You can see them. And then this is where it gets a little bit trickier. I'm going to put 2 dots in here. So if you've seen a dice, the 5 side of a dice, kind of looks like the 5 side of a dice. I'll have one here and one here. And then this is the tricky part. I'm going to come out a bit from this one and about the same distance from that one, I'll put another one. And I'll do the same on this side as well. So in between my rows of 3, I have a row of 6. Okay. And then following that, I'll find my next space. And I'll make another row of 6. And this in the classroom would be a lot slower. But I'm counting on the fact that you're adults and that you're muted, and so I can't hear your cries of frustration. So I'm moving a little quickly. So I have 2 rows of 6, and then I'll add a final row of 6, starting with my center dots. Here and there. And then finally, I'll find 1, 2, 3 dots on my outside edge, and then 1, 2, 3 dots in from that. And I'll make each of those squares look like the 5 side of a die. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. And I will give you a minute. And then I'll start putting the form in. This form, when I'm done with it, is going to look like this. Which when you see it, like I'll tell you, when I saw it, I said, wow, that looks pretty complicated. But then when I did it, I was amazed at how quickly it went. So putting the dots in is the hardest part. And I'm going to start with my form. So I'm going to use white chalk. If you have a graphite pencil, I would suggest that for this first step. And we try really hard when we're doing our initial graphite sketch on these weaving forms. We try really hard to use a light touch, but a light touch can be really hard to achieve sometimes. So just do your best. I'm going to start at my leftmost top dot. So this is in the row of 6 all the way to the left. And I'm actually, before I start, one thing I forgot. I'm going to put a little star here on my bottom middle and on my top middle, because those dots will get a little special treatment. So I'm starting here, and I'm going to follow this space between the dots until I get just below my star. And because I'm at the star, I'm going to gently round the corner and come all the way up to this next top dot. And since this one doesn't have a star, I get to go all the way around. And I'll come back all the way down to this one. And since this one doesn't have a star, I get to go all the way around. And I'll come up. I'll go all the way around. I'm down. I'm up to my star, so I don't get to go all the way around. I round it gently. Down. All the way around. This one I'm going to come around. And I'm back where I started. And then, Harper, do you think there's time to do a little bit of weaving? Okay. I'm going to take a thick piece of chalk. I'll use, I'll use this blue. Hopefully you can see it. I'm starting here. And every time I come to a line, I'm going to say over. Well, so I go over my first one, and then I'm going to go under. I'm going to go over that one and under. My class, the children in my class, have actually found it more helpful, instead of saying over under, which mimics if this were a weaving pattern, if we were weaving instead of drawing, we find it more helpful to say connect, skip. So I've done connect, skip, I'm at a connect, I skip, connect, skip, all the way around, connect, skip, connect, skip, connect, skip, connect, skip, connect, skip, connect, skip, connect, connect, skip, connect, skip, connect, skip, connect, skip, connect, skip, until I get back to where I started. And then I'll tell you in 4th grade, I'll show you some of our forms from earlier in the year. We haven't done that helper job yet. We make our forms nice and thick. So we're going over the pattern many times. And then we put an outline on them to make them look even more like woven bits of yarn or thread or rope. And sometimes we take a piece of rope out of our desks and we make the form in real life. And that's the 4th grade form. I'm going to bring you back to this one in case you want to keep working on it. And I think, Harper, are you ready to do your geometry demonstration?
I am, and I'll give them just a minute if they want to keep working on that for just a second, because I wanted to just tell you something I noticed when we were doing the little tour of your room, Elizabeth. The yarn that's in the back, so by the window, is actually connected. So like I said, everything in Waldorf is meant to be really intentional. And one of the themes of 4th grade is weaving and knots. And this is connected in the form drawings they do. This is illustrated in the handwork that they do. So they do cross stitch where they're kind of making knots with thread. And it's also connected to the Norse mythology that they learn about. So they focus on Norse mythology, and as we know, a lot of the artwork from the countries where the Norse lived has a lot of knots and interconnected forms. I think of like the Celtic knot and other things like that. So again, it's interesting to see these connections.
And in 4th grade too, there's a real strengthening, like an inward need for renewed strength as we kind of transition from the dreaminess of the early grades to the more solid and academic, challengingness of the upper grades. We're right in the middle. We are building our strength for a more intellectual work. The knot is the symbol for us, and the woven, the interlacing is our own strength on paper or in cross stitch.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. So then in 5th grade, we start an introduction to geometry, and we start looking at different shapes. We start giving shapes names. We start talking about the anatomy of different shapes. But we do this using beautiful artwork. So yes, we're making triangles, we're measuring diameters and circumferences, but we're doing it all with through the lens of beautiful artwork. So I wanted to show you one of the drawings that we did, and this was a drawing we did when we were learning about triangles, different triangles. So if you can, again, take out that piece of paper and a pencil. And we started in the middle of our page with a straight line sort of centered in our page. We are talking about triangles. So we were really working with 3 different triangles, and the first one is an equilateral triangle. So an equilateral triangle is characterized by having 3 sides that are the same length. So I have the students draw an equilateral triangle. 3 sides with the same exact length as best as they could. And you might have noticed that we talk about freehand geometry. So we're not using rulers, we're not using compasses. We're really just using the skills that we learned through form drawing, our spatial awareness, our hand-eye coordination, our fine motor, to try to make these forms as exact as we can. And of course, it's not always perfect, but it's a really good thing to strive for, to strive to do these things with just the tools we have on our body, our eyes, our brains, and our hands. So we start with an equilateral triangle, and then we reflect an equilateral triangle going down as well. So we have 2 equilateral triangles reflecting each other. Then next, we move on to right triangles. And right triangles are characterized by a right angle, so a 90-degree angle. And we use the same base that we used for our equilateral triangle. But instead of having this angle here, it goes straight up so that we create this right angle here, this right angle here, and then we have it cross over. So we have 2 right triangles facing each other. And then we're going to reflect that as well. So again, like we're peering into a pool of water and seeing the reflection. So we have 2 equilateral triangles and 4 right angles. And then this is the trickiest part. We're going to try to do 4 scalene triangles. Now, scalene triangles are characterized by having all 3 sides are a different length. So we have this, our first side. And I'm trying to make them all about the same height. And then the bottom again is that same base. But then we have this long side here. Light to the corner. So we have a scalene triangle. And then we'll do that again on the other side. Trying to get it to be as close as the other one as possible. And then we'll do it again, the reflection. So it was in a pool. And there we go. So we have 3 different kinds of triangles. We have our equilateral triangle, we have our right triangles, and our scalene triangles. We have reflection. And then some of the students also noticed some different shapes within the triangles and how they interact with each other. So we found some quadrilaterals, and we found some more scalene triangles in here. Yeah, a rhombus, lots of fun things. And then when the students were done drawing, they were able to color it in beautifully using their pencils. So This is one of the students' works, and he chose some warm colors to make his work beautiful. So that's one of the forms. One of the ways that we integrate art, we integrate form drawing, and we start to introduce some geometric concepts. And as you can see, we're still working with some of those same things that we started with in first grade. We're still working with straight lines. Elizabeth was showing curved and straight lines. So we're really just building year after year on concepts that the students already know and have practiced, and then making them beautiful, using a lot of time and intention to make our work as lovely and as beautiful as possible. So that is a little introduction to form drawing and freehand geometry. And we wanted to leave a little time for questions. And then in about 5 minutes, we will be moved back into the main session. So if there's any, or if any questions come to you later, or if there are any questions that are unanswered, we can certainly talk more about it there. But I wondered if anybody had a question.
I do. This is Adam. Avia's in. Am I on mute? No. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Good. With the crossing over the stitching exercise, what grade do they do that in? First, second grade? This one.
Oh, that's a 4th grade form.
That is 4th grade. Okay. And what's the, just to very briefly high level, what are they learning at that when they do that? Obviously paying attention and slowing down and thinking, but is there anything more Waldorfy that they're learning by jumping over lines and moving through space?
We kind of look to it in 4th grade as just a way to bring beauty to the world, and also the weaving of the form mirrors the weaving that we're trying to do inside of ourselves as we strengthen our resolve to get into the upper grades.
Okay.
At this point, it's not adding anything to our writing or our math skills, except we do add it to our work in our morning lesson books to make our pages more beautiful.
Okay.
It ties into Norse mythology loosely, I think.
Yeah, and it goes along with the Norse mythology in our curriculum for the year.
Okay. Good. And looks like stars, maybe you're looking up at the heavens or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it still goes along with that spatial awareness, hand-eye coordination, and fine motor skills, neuroplasticity, because it does take quite a bit of brain power to remember,
Yeah.
connect. But then again, it weaves into the Norse mythology. It weaves into what they're doing with their form or their handwork. So it's all very much connected.
And embroidery.
And embroidery when they do that.
Harper, could we add to that? So Jeff and Carlin, we've had 3 kids go through the school, and 2 boys and a girl. And, form drawing has really helped all 3 of them with just their hand coordination. Their writing is beautiful, their drawing is beautiful. And I think we attribute it to just the time with a writing implement and crayons all the way through 8th grade. And they wouldn't have those skills. And we see that now with our high schooler and college student, that they're able to express themselves through drawing, and because the time was taken. So I think that's one of the benefits as a non-teacher. That's what we've seen in our children.
And I also wonder if you find that it helps the students focus at the very beginning. If you do this at the very beginning of the day, if it helps them just focus and get ready to learn, I can see that would be a great benefit.
We do our daily form practice in between like our very big circle work in the morning with like all of our movement and our singing and our reciting. After we do all of that, the form really helps us come back to our seats and get ready to work. It's a moment of quiet, and in the beginning of the week, it's a moment of quiet movement. So it's a really nice and easy transition from being like, you know, let's jump rope, let's bounce these racquetballs, and now let's do some math. No, let's have a nice, easy transition between those two really different things.
Yeah, and I think it also goes back to that that question from our introduction about sort of these times of, you know, movement and speaking and joy and exuberance, and then these really quiet moments when we are really concentrated. And one thing Waldorf does really well is sort of balance these things. So we really want the students to have time to be, we call it out breaths. So talking, singing, playing, and then these moments of really concentrated work where they really have to focus. Are there other questions for us in the last couple minutes? And again, we'll have time after this too, so no worries.
One thing I'd like to add, as someone that always struggled with form drawing, is like, it doesn't matter if you're bad at it. You're just getting better at it every time you try. And you don't have to come out like a professional artist. You just put it in your book, and the best you can is good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sashel. That's a really wonderful thing about Waldorf education too, I think, is that students get the chance to try a whole lot of things. Like they get art, they get theater, they play instruments, they sing, they do a lot of writing, they do a lot of math, but everything that they try, it's not important that they become professional singers or cellists or artists. It's that they have the background that they can feel confident that they can tackle whatever comes their way. If you can stand in front of, 50 people and recite Shakespeare, or you can do that form that Elizabeth showed, which looks very complicated, then later in life you can do all sorts of other things too. So building confidence.
And you're never ranked or graded on any of it.
This is true. Thank you all so much. We'll see you in the other room.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. Was that just the coolest experience you've ever had on a Saturday morning? Can we give our teachers a little applause? Yes. I have two computers in front of me and I have earbuds, and one ear was listening to one class and the other ear was listening to the other class. And I felt like I was just on fire. I was learning a lot. Probably should not have been doing that because that is not a Waldorf approach of multitasking. I'm going to encourage everyone to turn your view to a gallery view. And then we're going to get our panel kind of pulled up as co-hosts so that they're going to be kind of towards the top for all of you. I would love if each of the classes could just give a little highlight of what just happened in your space for those of us who are not in your class, and any big takeaways that you'd like to share with the group. So let's start with the literacy class. Will you, Amy and Caitlin, just give us a little overview of what you talked about in your class?
Sure. Yeah, so we talked about, well, we heard a first grade story and we did a first grade drawing. And then we heard about how that begins to translate from first into second, third, and fourth. Well, really end of third. So we talked about phonemic awareness, we talked about decoding, and then we got to do a little bit of actual spelling and drawing and things like that.
And in form drawing class, we talked about how the forms change from first grade through fourth grade, including how they change to geometry in fifth grade. And we talked about the ways the forms bring us academic learning and the intrinsic value of form drawing.
Wonderful. Sounds just like everyone probably took something out of their classes. Thumbs up, people that attended. Did you learn something? Maybe I learned something that I didn't learn in second grade or in sixth grade. So I'm very excited. I would love to do a little have us do a little introduction of our panel. We're going to open up the rest of the call as a Q&A format. And we have our faculty who you've all been spending some time with and getting to know. We also have some parent seats on our panel of families that are currently in the school. We also have a lot of families that are attending this that are already in the school. So they, may have wonderful things to share as well, but I'll let our parent seats that are on our panel go ahead and introduce themselves.
I'll go. I am Tracy Porter. I have 3 daughters that attend. Nora is in second grade, Fiona is in kindergarten, and Rosemary is doing Growing Together. And we have been at the school for 6.5-ish years.
We can go next. My name is Jeff, and Carlin is my wife, and we have 3 kids at the school. One is now a freshman, first year student at St. Olaf College, and he did high school at Roseville Area High School. We have a junior at Roseville Area High School who went through kindergarten through 8th grade, son. And then our daughter Adelaide is an 8th grader this year. So this is we're heading into the final stretch at MWS. We've been there 14 years. So, and it's really exciting to be with you all and kind of be reminded what those early years were like and what they were learning, and just such a positive experience for our family.
Yeah, that's 14 years is incredible. That's a really amazing, vast experience level. So all of you who are thinking about, what does it mean when my kid goes to school? Feeling that pressure of like, do I need to decide where my kid's going to go to college when they're in kindergarten? Like, do I have to be thinking about these things? The answer is no, first of all, but also there's some relief in knowing like, look what, the graduates of this program are going on to do really amazing things, which also brings us into introducing our alumni. So we have 2 wonderful alumni with us. Helena, will you start and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Helena. I graduated Waldorf in the class of 2019 with Miss Reilly, and I'm currently a junior in high school at Nova Classical Academy. Yeah, and I really enjoyed my Waldorf experience, and I'm excited to answer your questions about it.
I'm Satchel Moore. I'm Miss Moore Harper's older brother. I graduated in the class of 2000. I started at Waldorf in 1990. I went there preschool through 8th grade, went to a Waldorf preschool as well. I teach cello there, private cello lessons after school almost every day. I have 3 jobs, and they're all directly related to skills that I learned at Waldorf, almost more so than I did in high school and college.
Okay, so our floor is officially open. I know we've been bombarding you with information for an hour and a half, and you probably have a lot of questions. So feel free, if you feel comfortable raising your hand, virtually with your little Zoom hand and talking, you may do that. You're also welcome to use the chat feature. You can directly send me a message or send it to the group, and we can get started.
Well, I don't see how I can raise my Zoom hand. I had never done that before, so I'll just start talking. So we looked around a couple of the rooms, and I just had questions when I saw that. I never asked these questions before. I've got a student. My daughter's a 5th grade student right now, but they move from room to room. I know they keep the same teacher, but room to room, are the rooms designed to bring? Are they designed specifically for that new class? Like the 8th grader room looks a lot different than the 1st grade room. I know that the decor changes, you kind of make it your own, but is it structurally, is there intent for having a closet over there or a table over here for science experiments, things like that? How does that change from year to year, or does it? Okay, I don't hear any answers.
I'll jump in. So you are very astute in your observation, Adam. It does change. And it is why actually recently, because we do have our 6th grade, my former class has joined Ms. Shortridge's class. So we are missing a 6th grade right now, if you will. Which has allowed us to have the 1st grade in the building with us. Normally, they would be in one of the rooms in the kindergarten cottage, but we are so adoring having the 1st grade in the main building with us. But you will notice the 1st grade has a red hue and 2nd grade is orange. It kind of flows through to blue. And the kindergarten, as many of you might know, has that rosy hue as well. And there is something behind the colors, which is probably a really long conversation, but I'll say that as we delve in more into our heads, the blue and purple can reflect that. And as we are more in our bodies and our hearts, the reds and rosy colors can reflect that. If you want to stop me in the hall sometime, Adam, we could have a 3-hour conversation about colors. But the biggest differences are that in the 3rd grade, we have a small kitchen because we do a lot of cooking, and we have our tool shed area in the classroom because we do a lot of work with that. So yes, each classroom is a bit, has some tendencies towards what that class will need. In the lower grades, we have big areas for play or quiet spaces. And in the upper grades, those are used for science and math manipulatives or computers or things that they would need.
All right, thanks. And it's great that they get to move around. I love doing that in school, going from class to class. Yeah, year to year. It was nice to get a different change. So that's good that Waldorf continues that.
I'd love to start with Jennifer's question about the graduates talking about their transition to high school and how that experience was from leaving Waldorf in 8th grade and going into high school. Helena, will you start, and Satchel, you can round that out because there will be a pretty vast, experience between the both of you and your ages. Helena's at Nova Classical Academy, which if you're not local, or if you don't know the school, it's a very rigorous academic program. It's like based in Latin, I believe. So she can talk more about that, but it is sort of the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to like rigorous academics when you're looking at Waldorf. So I think that she'll have some interesting things to say about that.
Yeah, so when I finished 8th grade, I was really excited to start a new school because I'd just been at Waldorf for so long and I wanted something new. And so when I joined Nova, I felt like a little bit of an outsider because a lot of the students had already been there for a while because it's a K through 12 school. But I really found my way into the program there, and I had a couple difficulties at first, just like because it was like a big transition from, not so much homework to a lot of homework. And so, but then I really found my way into it, and now I'm doing really well. I'm part of the National Honor Society, and I'm doing really well. And it was like a big transition, but I felt like Waldorf offered me the opportunity to explore like extracurriculars outside of school because I didn't have so much homework. And then also it didn't burn me out because I felt like a lot of my classmates at my current school have been doing this rigorous curriculum for so long, and they just aren't as invested in their learning as I personally feel I am. And so I felt like Waldorf really offered me a way to like love learning, and that I feel like is almost more valuable than like just like knowing a ton of stuff. So yeah, that's my insight there.
So Satchel, you are still muted.
Similarly to Helena, I went to a very rigorous high school straight after 8th grade. I went to Mounts Park Academy. I was ready intellectually. It took me a second to catch up again with the homework, but where Helena made a really great point is that the extracurriculars that you get to do at Waldorf kind of give you a giant head start socially, because you walk in as an athlete, as a musician, as an artist, and you instantly gain respect. There's a lot of things that you don't have to do, like shade your maps in social studies and make everything so beautifully. That gives you a little bit extra time to get the work done after school muscle ready. But it takes about a month, and then you're pretty much good to go. The relationships that you have with your teachers at Waldorf build a entirely different platform for relating to your teachers in high school and college than all your other students. And so you're willing and able to get the help you need. Ms. Moore, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I'm also an alum, as I mentioned before, and I think both of you spoke so beautifully to this. And I just wanted to clarify that I believe Waldorf was very academically rigorous. I just think it looked different from how it looked in my high school experience. I also went to Mounts Park Academy and transitioned there pretty seamlessly. I can, confirm both of what both of you said about, the homework was a little more intense, and that having the ability to do art and to participate in sports helped me socially. Having that relationship with my teachers, like the willingness to go up and ask for help, because I know that my teacher is there to help me, because Waldorf taught me that I have the respect of my teacher and the teacher respects me, and I can ask for what I need from my teacher. That was really helpful. But I think somehow Waldorf got this reputation for not being academically rigorous. And I really want to be clear that I believe it is academically rigorous. I just think that it looks different. It's not, worksheets. It's not computer, standardized tests. It is rigorous in a different way.
Great point.
Thank you for that. That was wonderful. We have another question about creating safe spaces for LGBTQ students and families. And I know Amy said that she would like to speak on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I just want to say I don't even know how to start. Now I had a great answer, and then I saw all of you and wanted to tell you all the things. I hate summarizing. I just wanted to say that as an identifying teacher in that group, I can say that we have a welcoming environment as colleagues, but also as families and children. And I would say the biggest way that happens is that we just talk about it. We don't avoid the conversations. We don't avoid the topics. And when children are young and they ask questions, we answer them to the best of our ability. And we don't treat it as a taboo subject or, oh, why did you ask that question? You should ask your mom. We don't treat it in that sense. We treat it as a child who is curious and wants to know more. And when you treat a child with curiosity and you respond to that with love and openness, that shows them that everyone is welcome. And I will just say that I think that we really try to do that for all people, neurodivergent people, people of color, people of indigenous people. I think that we have made that such a priority as a faculty. And I feel like all of my colleagues are together in really wanting this to feel safe and outwardly appear safe by what we are doing with the children. You will see safe zone signs and rainbows outside many of our classrooms. And in fact, I had a conversation with third graders. We've had a couple conversations this year. Well, Ms. Rodriguez, why are there so many letters in that acronym? And what does that all mean? And what is this? And treating them and their curiosity with respect and love, and treating the people who they're asking about with respect and love. I am certain that many of my other colleagues have other things they'd like to add to that.
I'm just going to add one tiny thing. Amy, you spoke so beautifully about this and answered this question so beautifully. I also feel that our parent community is very supportive of our approach as faculty members towards inclusiveness and towards approaching curiosity and questions with love. That's all I'm going to say. I feel like the community as a whole is very supportive.
Yeah, and can I just add, I think it goes back to this reverence, this respect for ourselves and our community. If we can see each other, even people who look or think or feel differently than ourselves as part of our community, and take some ownership of that, then we can start on a basis of respect and really see each other through that lens. And we work really hard as Waldorf teachers to make sure that our communities feel this way and function in this way.
I am going to just jump in with one last teeny weeny thing that we also have adjusted language. So instead of saying things like your moms and dads are here, we might say your parents are here. That way, you know, there's doesn't matter who your parent is, or I actually even sometimes say your people are here, because I have families in my class that are of varying makeups. And so I have several children who it's not always a parent who picks them up. So we do things like that so that everyone feels really held and respected and seen.
Thank you everyone for that. I have a private question that also couples with another question that came to the group, which was, does Minnesota Waldorf School participate in standardized testing? And the private question sort of coupled with that, which I think could easily go together, is someone was interested in hearing more about STEM in Waldorf education and what that looks like. So I'd be curious to hear different thoughts on that.
I think Waldorf created STEM and STEAM, just to be clear. I just want to say that. Not me personally, I won't take the credit, but I think that the approaches that are coming into public schools now and to the broader arenas, you can see the Waldorf pedagogy in. And schools are now realizing that children can't just learn math with worksheets. That doesn't work. And so how do we connect math and art and math and science and music, and how do we bring it together? So I think Waldorf does it. I mean, that's what we do. That is our mission. As far as standardized tests, right now it's only in the upper grades. 7th grade takes the, thank you. 7th grade does take one of the standardized tests. However, we do some assessments in other grades that teachers just look at, and it's always given in a very different format or a different view, I think, than in a public school. So we don't prep for it. We don't get the children learning about things on the test. It's just like, oh, today we're going to take this fun test. We're going to fill in these bubbles and you're going to do these answers, and then it's done and it's gone. So it isn't a focus.
Yeah, I think, Amy, that's a really good point. We don't teach to a test, which is something that we hear a lot in the news about schools. We don't teach to a test. we teach to human capacity so that the students can have what they need to learn and move forward in their lives. And there's one other thing I was going to say. Oh, all the assessments that I have done so far from 1st to 5th grade have been formative. So that's something you might hear. Formative assessments are assessments that are used for me, not for them, but for me, so that I can see where they are and I can adjust my teaching accordingly. So it's not anything really that I would even show them. It's really for me and for my teaching.
Just to add to what Harper and Amy have said, the ultimate joy, I think, of being a Waldorf teacher is that I'm not focused on how my students do on a test. That's not my end goal in my work here in the classroom. My end goal is my students' interest. And so I can focus on them and make sure that their eyes are bright and they're receiving what I teach them. That's how I know that I'm doing a good job, and not because they're getting a great score or their numbers are good. It's teaching to human beings, and it's really wonderful.
We have another question about how parents participate in the life of the school. So I would love to hear from our parent seats, what your involvement has looked like through the years, how it's evolved, and maybe talk a little bit about committees. And I think that's something a lot of schools don't have, to have this combination of parents, faculty, administration sort of working together for the betterment of the school on a lot of different areas. So would you all speak to that?
As someone who had a parent at the school, the parents do so much for the school and they're involved in so much. And the partnership they have with the faculty and the administration is incredible. There's a lot of communication, a lot of hard work, a lot of hours, and a lot of love that's for the community.
I can answer that. I apologize. My husband works nights, so I have the kids. But parent education or involvement is basically as much as you'd like to get involved. I know there are a lot of dual working families and who can't contribute as much. I am lucky that I stay home, and we moved here prior to Nora going to school, and I didn't know anyone. And Waldorf is basically my community as well. I'm on parent council, and I'm on working with we're working on summer camp and the welcome committee, and we work with the faculty all the time. Obviously on those, and also there's gatherings. Is it once a month, the Friday gatherings that parents come to, and obviously COVID has caused some altercations to parent involvement, but prior to that we would have gatherings. We'd have coffee corner, so we have the espresso machine, and we gather on Wednesday mornings after drop off. We also have, I went to this great gathering, it was on a Friday morning, about technology throughout the grades, which was super important because, coming to an alternative school, it's kind of one of those subjects that can be challenging. And I know we have one of those planned coming up in the next couple months as well. But yeah, I feel very lucky that we found this community, and it's awesome because everyone's, if anyone needs help, then there are people there, and I've made so many good friends here, and I just feel super lucky that we are here.
Tracy, will you quickly explain what parent council is?
Oh, sure. So Waldorf works as a consistent model. So there's the board, the parent council, and then the other one is it the faculty?
Steering.
Steering, yes. So parent council, there are representatives from each class who we meet at least once a month. We plan special events. We talk about concerns that people have, progress in the school, fundraising. We bring up all these different things, again, if anyone needs help, we're there for that. And then the parent council chair is also on the board and steering. So they work directly with the faculty as well to either move things forward or address issues and all those good things.
And we can just add a bit. I think Tracy summed it up really well. It's the school is really our community. The folks that send their children there, it's a place where we can join as much as you want in it. I think we've gotten as much out of it as our children with friendships and experiences. I served on the board for a number of years and still serve on one of the board committees. So that's an opportunity, and our board is really a board for anybody. And we work with teachers and work with parents. The parent council is an amazing way to connect and meet other parents and go through those experiences of trying to figure out how to raise young children together. So it really is a community school. It works because parents invest in whatever way they can. And we've found that to be absolutely true. It's challenged us to live differently, live better, and I think really engage everything from helping pack for field trips to cheering the children on in different plays, even if it's not a different grade that your kid's in. There's just all kinds of experiences. I think community is one of the really strong aspects of this education of this school.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And as a fellow parent, I can agree with all of those things too. We have a couple of questions. One is about how computers and technology and online awareness are introduced and learned over the later years.
I can pop in on that quick, and then the rest of you can add some. For those of you who don't know, I also have a son in 7th grade. And there was a question earlier about being ready for 1st grade, and I so wanted to pipe in. We actually held my son back a year. So he is in 7th grade and 14, and it is the right fit for him. And it is the right place for him. And I think the answer in that time was to trust your teachers, and I would agree with that. And to trust yourself too. But as far as technology, because I popped in, my son is actually starting to build a computer. And what I would say that our technology and our education of computers and online work has sort of taken a jump in the past 2 years because everyone had to go online. So when we first went online 2 years ago, I was at that time teaching a 4th grade class, and usually would start cyber civics curriculum in 5th grade. And so I started a year early because they needed to start to learn those things in 4th grade because we were going online. And so the cyber civics curriculum was actually written by former Waldorf parents, and they included Waldorf teachers and Waldorf pedagogy in this program, but it's used all over the country, not just in Waldorf schools. And it is designed to help parents be connected to the program, so you can be at home going along with your students, knowing what they're learning. And it starts like all Waldorf does with the idea that it's in your body first. So we talk about communities and what communities are you part of. And so they make drawings of the communities they're part of. And then we talk about how those communities expand onto the internet, and how do you treat people on the internet just like we treat people in person, and what are those differences? So really helping them to understand that there are human beings that are manipulating these devices, and that these devices are tools and they are not living things, that you have control over it. And then by the time you're in 7th and 8th grade and building a computer, as Satchel referred to, they're learning what belongs in the computer, and that the motherboard is like the teacher who holds the information, and that, you know, the CPU has to do the information, give the solution to the motherboard to transfer here. So they're actually understanding how it works, and they can see it as a tool instead of this magical device that provides them with all the wonders of the world.
I'd like to add that in 8th, we didn't have any of the civic stuff. We just got a computer in 8th grade that we could use to type up a couple things and did some basic programming. And then the next year I went to Mounts Park Academy, where every single student for the first time had a laptop, and I had 0 problems. And I'm sure, Helena, you probably didn't have any problems transitioning.
No, not really. I did not. I think I came a little bit before the cyber civics program was implemented. But I felt that just like my family really held strong to the idea that we weren't going to use computers a whole lot in our family. And I still don't have a personal cell phone. And I kind of like hold some pride in that, because I'm like the only person who's my age that I know who does that. And I feel like it's just I feel like I'm unique in that way, that I've just tried to use technology as a tool rather than a form of just pure entertainment. I've probably definitely used it for those reasons, but I've really been really conscientious about using it in the best way possible. So yeah.
We can move on to a little bit, which I think flows nicely into the next question, which is hearing from the alumni, what did you enjoy most about your Waldorf experience, and how did it impact not only your education, but your life?
I'll start, I guess. Waldorf influenced every aspect of my life, especially now. I mentioned earlier that I have 3 jobs. One is I do social media. I manage accounts that have over 1 million followers for Red Wing Shoe Company. And I got the job literally having 0 experience with social media. Social media wasn't a word when I graduated from Waldorf or from high school. The person called me and was like, "You went to Waldorf, you're ready for this." And she had only been a Waldorf parent in preschool, but she knew me through my other jobs, and was just like, "I know that you have the skills for this because you went to Waldorf," and it had nothing to do with my high school or college degrees. I have a degree in music theory and a degree in business management. And my other jobs are I ref soccer and teach cello, both of which I didn't spend a lot of time in focusing on educating myself after Waldorf. I did get a degree in music theory, but I didn't really focus on the cello. And I was basically ready to teach cello coming out of 8th grade. I didn't practice in high school. I barely practiced in college. And just the 20 minutes a day that was expected of me as a cellist from 3rd to 8th grade gave me the tools to participate in punk bands in high school, win an award as a computer musician in college, all just with Waldorf skills that I took for granted and actually didn't really appreciate or enjoy that much at the time. And thirdly, I run a business that just purchased a building. The government gave me money to purchase a building, doing handwork, repairing clothes, just sewing and crocheting and knitting and stitching things back together. I have 3 employees. We use a lot of beeswax. We do all the stuff that I was taught in preschool: carding, finger knitting, crocheting, embroidery, knitting socks, knitting 3-dimensionally. What's next? Designing clothes, doing your doll, felting, and then quilting. All that stuff. The eight grades of handwork is one of my jobs, and I'm paying people, and people are paying their mortgages because of my 8th grade education. I'll butt out now. And my favorite part was, I guess, all those gifts that were just given to me that I didn't even ask for.
I can chime in as well about what my favorite experiences were and how they shaped who I am right now and who I hope to be in the future. So one of the things I found really, really valuable about Waldorf was just the connections I was able to form with my teachers and my classmates, because they were just so long lasting. I still meet up occasionally. COVID has, of course, made this difficult with some of my former classmates. But just the connections that I've made have been really valuable. And also those connections, I feel like because I formed the ability to feel good about my teachers and have a good connection with them, I feel now that today I have no issues with asking teachers questions if I have a problem in class, and I'm willing to speak up in class. And so that's been really, really valuable. Another thing is just the community aspect of Waldorf. I think we've already talked about this a bit, but I just felt like I was part of a bigger group. Like it wasn't just me and my family as part of the school, it was me and the whole school as, and so I found that really, really important and made me feel welcome. And I feel like almost everyone at Waldorf feels welcome. And also just the freedom, I guess, that Waldorf allowed me. I already talked about this a little bit, but it just enabled me to do extracurriculars that I may not have been able to do without Waldorf. Like, for example, I still play the violin, and I don't know if I would have started doing that if it hadn't been for Waldorf. And that was really valuable. And just, yeah, not feeling like school was my whole life, but there is more to my life than school. And I feel like some students have, our school is the only thing they do, but Waldorf enabled me to do more than that. So, yeah.
Helena, we have to let people know that you're a competitive climber. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I'm like one of the best in the state for climbing in my age group. So yeah, it's a really fun thing. And I don't think I would have able to get into it as much if I hadn't had the freedom that Waldorf allowed me to pursue that. So.
Or the hand strength.
I know some of you here are prospective families and some of you are already here, but just a little like back context for those of you who are exploring the school for the first time. I know they're talking a lot about these extracurriculars. Some of these things are already like built into what the teachers are doing in each class. And we also have specialist teachers that visit the grade students from 1st to 8th grade, both in handwork, which Satchel was talking about. We have ensemble, which starts in 3rd grade. So students get a choice between violin, viola, and cello. And before that, they are working on the recorder and the pentatonic flute. And music and choirs, singing is a huge part of Waldorf. Singing and humming and sort of feeling that vibration in your body is very much a part of the curriculum, whether it's from a choir teacher or from their actual teacher. Music and rhythm is integrally connected in the curriculum. In addition, we have a wonderful movement teacher who does different block lessons. Right now, he's working on a really exciting circus block with our students. So our festival hall is filled with a beautiful silk lyra and some trapeze and some tightrope equipment and lots of trampolines and jumping, and the students are in heaven. They absolutely love it because, of course, this is a time of year when everyone's kind of cooped up and needs to be outside, and we're not outside as much when it's -30 below zero. So this is a really fun time of year for them to still get a lot of those sensory input pieces into their bodies and helps them regulate once they get into those lesson times. We also have an extra lesson teacher, which I think that the name of her job could be expanded upon because Ms. Sanborn does so much work with our students in a lot of different ways, a lot of kinesthetic learning, a lot of alternative support for students who have learning differences. And she has a very rich experience to bring to the students. Just this week, the 3rd graders were out cross-country skiing because they were excited to have, she wanted them to be working on their cross-lateral movement, which helps with literacy. And all these things are so intentional. And our final specialist, and I might be forgetting one also, is French. So the students from grades 1 through 8 are also getting French lessons in a uniquely Waldorf approach, which is something that's really special. That they all have the opportunity to participate in as well. They also do woodworking and science experiments and all these things, but just those of you who are new to the school or just kind of thinking about this, these are things that are already included. So there's, as a parent, I feel like sort of this release of like, do I have to get my kid involved in all these extracurricular things? Like, this is like a one-stop shop. They can do all of these wonderful things and really feel out what they like and what they're excited about, and then go on to do a lot of different things because they've had this introduction in the early years within their bodies and their minds. So we will need to wrap up this morning. I wanted to give you all my email address if you have questions about enrolling in the school, about re-enrolling. We are currently working through some technical glitches, and hopefully this week we should have that open for families to both re-enroll and enroll for next year. I'm happy to be a resource. I'm happy to connect you with any of the people that you have talked to today. If you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out. And if you forget that email, you can go to our website and we will get you to the right person. Thank you for sharing your time and energy with us today. Can we give all of the panelists and the teachers just a big round of applause? Thank you so much. And have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. If anyone wants to stick around and chit chat, I'll leave the meeting open. But thank you for joining us this morning. We're so happy to have you, and we hope to stay in touch.
Thank you so much.